So we'll go over our agenda. What is the NSLDS statistics score? And then we're going to go through the factors that influence that statistics score. We'll provide you with several case studies and then proposed action plans for each of those case studies. And then just some general best practices. And it does seem all-encompassing, but the best practices that we're going to list are actually related to, how you can support your institution's compliance health and avoiding surprises when it comes to NSLDS's statistical calculation. And then again, questions in the Q&A pod, and if there's anything pressing during the presentation, we'll just go ahead and stop and take the question. Otherwise, we can definitely have that Q&A session at the end. So what is the NSLDS Enrollment Reporting Statistics Score? I wanted to provide you with some background. There is helpful information on this screen, but in addition to that, the NSLDS expects that schools report both campus level enrollment and also program level detail. Now, specifically for program level enrollment, reporting for all students in your school's student portfolio of Title IV participants, the NSLDS calculates the percentage of students in that portfolio to assess what percentage are, quote, certified with program enrollment. So there are legitimate instances that some of your student population are not certified with program enrollment. However, there are other instances where a student is in a defined program, but the NSLDS is unable to certify the program details reported. And so the NSLDS has provided a statistical score for your school to better enable you to track and take action for those specific instances where program enrollment reported is either inconsistent or needs your attention or needs clarification. The NSLDS did release a newsletter back in a few years ago, July of 2015, announcing the purpose and establishment of that statistics score and the accompanying statistics page that is on the NSLDS site. So a general threshold has been set by the NSLDS, which is the title of this presentation, and that's at 90%. So to be in compliance, you must maintain a 90% or above the statistical score with the NSLDS. And this means that NSLDS, in essence, what they're trying to say to you, what the Department of Ed is saying to you, is that they expect the majority of Title IV schools to maintain at least 90% of their school's portfolio of students to have certified program enrollment accepted by the NSLDS. So a new score is calculated the third Wednesday of every month. And then a final important note here, that last bullet point, is that this score is cumulative. So that, I think, the fact that the evaluation period is 135 days, it really does make things somewhat challenging, which is why we have a dedicated webinar to this topic, because the frequency of enrollment reporting that goes out from the Clearinghouse to the NSLDS on the roster process is multiple ones in any 135-day period. That can make a cumulative score somewhat challenging as an end user when you're reviewing your score, to figure out if there is a problem, what is that problem, and how do I go about fixing it. So this is just a generic school page in the NSLDS that you would see once logged in to the NSLDS site, and you'd navigate to the enrollment reporting statistics page displayed here. And on this page, in the event that the score is below the 90% threshold, NSLDS has set for their program enrollment certification calculation, you'll see a warning icon indicating as much. And additionally, there's a different warning icon that you might incur on this page, and that's the roster icon. For Clearinghouse participant schools, the roster icon should not affect you, and that's because our existing and really long-standing process that we have in place for responding to rosters is such that we don't respond to rosters untimely. So that's our commitment to you month in and month out. We have mechanisms in place. We have dedicated humans here that are monitoring that roster response process to ensure that there is not an untimely roster response. Untimely would be more than 15 calendar days of receipt. So you, as a clearinghouse school, should not see a roster date late notification for your enrollment reporting statistics. So this is a text-heavy slide, but there's a lot of material here. But and I think this information could prove helpful if you were to share it with coworkers or colleagues or someone that maybe hasn't looked at the NSLDS statistics score for your school and you'd like to check that out on the NSLDS. So this information is definitely helpful for aftercare too, not just for the presentation. But this is a list of terms for our reference that the NSLDS uses in their enrollment reporting statistics. To best understand the statistics page, it really is important that we familiarize ourselves with the meaning of these terms, and this information is a direct excerpt from the NSLDS guide, speaking to the various terms appearing on that statistics page. So some highlights on this page. The definitions that you see here, there are three of them that have a single red asterisk. Those are the ones that go directly in to the calculation that NSLDS does to get your statistical score each evaluation period. So let's go over some of the ways that your score can be affected. There are a variety of factors that can raise, lower, or maintain your statistical score with the NSLDS, and because the evaluation period is so long, it's 135 days, that means that it can take time. If your score is lower than you'd like to see or below 90%, it can take time to correct that. And so that's always good to know, is that instant gratification of, okay, I did XYZ that I needed to do, and I want to see an immediate result. Just the way that this statistical score is set up, it may not be that way because, again, the evaluation period is so long. So how this factors into the NSLDS statistics score is I'm going to just pop these out here so you can read through them as I'm speaking. There are multiple roster cycles, meaning there are multiple certifications of enrollment for each of the students who are Title IV for your school that are having data reported out to the NSLDS in that 135-day time frame. So basically, the best approach with the NSLDS statistics score is for your institution to report consistent and accurate program enrollment information for your population. And to do that, near the bottom of this screen, there's second bullet point from the bottom. You want to report consistent and accurate program enrollment to both Common Origination and Disbursement, so COD, and also to Clearinghouse, to us. And each of these different systems, they speak to each other in different ways. COD does not speak to NSC though. And so for that reason, we want to be sure that information that's for student A in the school system, in COD, in NSC, and NSLDS, we want to make sure it matches for that student A. So let's go over what exactly does the Department of Education expect of you. These are going to be the high-level, overarching, basic expectations, and it's these basic expectations that the Clearinghouse looks to and takes into consideration with how we've created our roster response process for you, for your institution, and also we look to these basic expectations from the department when we're assessing or considering any sort of system enhancement to make the process better for you. So those are as follows. The Department of Ed, they expect that, and I'm not sure for those with us today, I want to stop for a second. So for those with us today, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the compliance reporting process with the department, or if this is like second-hand nature to you. So I'll just go over, there's lots of acronyms. We have SSCR, so that's the Student Status Confirmation Report, and it's sort of an older terminology, but basically it's the roster that NSLDS creates and they send to Clearinghouse for your school, and we respond to it, and we have to do it within 15 days. So that takes care of 1 and 2. Number 3, correct the errors within 10 days. So just like any data ingestion process, there's checks and balances and logic to ensure accuracy, formatting, and also consistency and continuity. So there is potential for there to be roster errors. So an expectation that the department has is that you're correcting those errors within 10 days. Side note, and we'll mention it in later slides, but Clearinghouse does present those errors to you on our secure portal. Number 4, and this is going to be, number 4, we're going to talk about, this is student level. So for students who are students who are benefiting from federal financial aid, you must report status changes to the department within a certain time frame. And so for that reason, because you're a Clearinghouse school, you would likely send updated enrollment data to us on regularly scheduled submissions that maybe most schools do monthly with us, which works well for compliance, some a little less frequent, a little more frequent. And the whole purpose of having that set frequency is that it's to help your school avoid compliance issues and to capture status changes and send them to Clearinghouse swiftly so that we can report them out timely. And then finally, the 5th expectation, enrollment reporting statistics score, it must be 90% or above. And that's, that makes up for today's presentation. So what can happen? What are some of the ramifications for your NSLDS enrollment reporting statistics score being below the 90% threshold? NSLDS, they can issue letters to your school. They can go to the Director of Financial Aid. They can go to the administrator on your account with NSLDS. They could be sent to the president, that sort of thing. So that can occur. Multiple letters of noncompliance, so we're talking about an issue that persists where the statistics score remains below 90% or below the threshold. That can result in addition, along with possible escalated action referring to program compliance. So for your awareness, individuals at the school with NSLDS access, they can log into the NSLDS to confirm if your institution has any prior evaluation periods with the Department of Ed that were below the threshold where NSLDS had issued a letter to you. So if you're unsure, there is an area on the NSLDS site where you can go check that out. So on the NSLDS, there is a specific report, and this is one that you would want to look for when you're logged in there if you're looking to see about letters, and that's the SCHCR1 report. And that's the enrollment reporting compliance report to let you know if any letters went out. So the enrollment reporting statistics page, we're going to go over some case studies. So case number 1, if you are not in the registrar's office, we'll just pretend. Let's say that you are the registrar at your school. You've recently notified your financial aid director that your NSLDS score is not what you'd like it to be. You want it to be 90% or above, and it is currently at 83% as of the latest evaluation period. You know that you're late in reporting your enrollment file to the Clearinghouse, and you have an inkling that this could have something to do with SSCR roster errors with the NSLDS. So you want to know what's the next step, what can be done, how should you proceed in this exact scenario. So for this scenario, you'd address your SSCR roster errors, and that is a compliance requirement. So basically, each time you should have dedicated folks at the school who, after each roster cycle, there can be 1 to 2 a month, most likely for your school. Though they'll want to be sure to just be monitoring, like, did any roster errors come back? Are they on the Clearinghouse site? If so, let me take action. Let me be swift about that. And to do that consistently can really be helpful in avoiding having your NSLDS statistics score not be what you want it to be, and also just for overall compliance health. So you log into the Clearinghouse site, you review your SSCR errors, and then you submit the updates to the Clearinghouse as swiftly as possible. If NSLDS advises you to correct the errors directly with them, I'm sorry, let me go back. If Clearinghouse, NSC, Clearinghouse, if we advise you to correct the errors directly in NSLDS, it's a rarity that we advise in that way, but there are isolated incidences where the update has to be in NSLDS so that future Clearinghouse reporting to NSLDS will go through without errors. So again, if you have concerns, we have other webinars about that. I'll mention that later too again. And we do have resources available on our site, and we have staff here too for any outlier or unusual questions that you come across where online support just isn't getting the job done. So addressing the roster errors from the NSLDS, the reason why you would want to reach out to us, to the Clearinghouse, in the event you have a question about a particular roster error is just so we can advise you on the absolute best approach to address the error and to do so timely with the ed reporting requirement being what it is, which, outside of compliance reporting in general, I personally always thought of 10 days as being a long time, but in the compliance world, it's a pretty swift turnaround. 10 days really is. So especially if you're dealing with more than a handful of errors, 10 days just seems like a pretty short period of time. So updating the NSLDS directly for many varieties of SSCR errors can result in presenting you with more SSCR errors. So you definitely wouldn't want to just do, like, I don't know, maybe like considering it a quick fix or something to just update a bunch of things in NSLDS. It will most likely cause additional roster errors, and we certainly don't want that to happen for you. So to avoid this, if you have a specific question or concern, you've exhausted our online resources, please definitely reach out to us so that we can take a closer and hard look at and offer you assistance with addressing the error presented. For added support with roster errors, you can also consider reviewing the Clearinghouse Academy page. We'll put a link at the end on as well. And Patrick had mentioned earlier in that helpful links section on the left, there's a link to it there too, the Clearinghouse Academy page. So enrollment statistics are case study number 2. After discovering that your roster errors are not an issue, so you checked that out, everything's good to go. Let's say you just had a few errors and someone on your end at the school had addressed them and done so timely, and that you've done it consistently. So you're more confident in coming closer to ruling out roster errors as the culprit for lowering or for producing a lower than expected NSLDS statistics score, and you want to see which students are being reported without program enrollment, because you believe that a significant portion of your students are really and truly not degree seeking. So if that's not going to be every school, but for some schools it is not unusual to have students taking one class here or there, they're not degree seeking, etc., and that you are legitimately reporting them without program enrollment. So in other words, it's not a requirement for every student to be in a program. That's not the Department of Ed expectation. The expectation is that in the event the student is in a program, that you are reporting them as such, that they're in a program. That's really the distinction. And I think us wrapping our minds around that piece, at least for me, that's kind of really what's helped me get get a better understanding of what is the statistical score all about and what's its significance for schools with regard to compliance reporting. So we're going to just take a 5-second pause. Thank you so much. I apologize. I needed a sip of water. Okay, so for case number 2, what action would we take? What would we do? Really and truly, the best course of action here would be to review a list of your students who are not reported with program enrollment, and just ask this question about that population, that group of students who's not reported with a program. You want to ask, is your school one that has a lot of transient students who are not degree seeking? So I know that there is a lot of material when it comes to the discussion of the statistical score, but really it's just the bottom line is what I'm hearing loud and clear from NSLDS is we want schools to report accurate program enrollment, and in the event the student's not in a defined program, then they should not have program enrollment. That's basically it. I know it seems so simple the way I just said it, but that's really what they want. That's really what this is all about. So anyway, the newsletter number 55, that's an NSLDS newsletter. It came out in August of 2016. That particular newsletter speaks to a report that you can run from the NSLDS to provide you with a list of students who simply do not have certified program level information in the NSLDS system. In general, if a student's program enrollment needs to be updated, you would typically update it with us. You'd update it with Clearinghouse usually, and then we would go about updating NSLDS using that vessel, the SSCR roster process. So now, if your school determines that a significant portion of your student population is legitimately attending but is not enrolled in a defined program, these are the students that when you're reporting to Clearinghouse and you're sending us your enrollment files, you would indicate N for no program enrollment. It's that simple. So N for no program enrollment. And if your school identified with this exact scenario that I just described, where you have really and truly a significant portion of your population who are not in a defined program, they're not general studies, they're not undecided major where they intend to get a degree at your school, not any of that, but they simply are not in a program, then there is, this is going to be that bottom bullet point, there is an email address from the government that you can send a note to inquire about having a different threshold set for your specific school that is not 90%. So maybe 80% is more appropriate for your school. 90 is the bar they set, but it's not a bar that's in stone. If you need a different score and any of this for case number 2 speaks to you, definitely contact us if you have questions. But then you might be a good candidate school to have a different percentage than 90. So for this particular slide, NSLDS, they did determine that they needed to provide schools with more specific detail about the statistical score. And so in November of 2017, last year, about a year ago, I guess, the FSA did announce that NSLDS created an additional report. Sometimes you can feel buried in reports, but this particular report really and truly there was a gap, and NSLDS, I think, did a great job of filling it to provide you with another way of looking at your data and to give you more insight about your statistical score. And that report that does that is the Enrollment Reporting Statistics Backup Detail Report. And then it's got this acronym that's hard to say, so I just say SCHCB1 report. This report, what it does, so what does it do for your school? What does this do? This report enables your institution to review a student detail list. That's key. So yeah, let's say that the score isn't what you want it to be. Well, if we don't know the student names, how can we move forward? It's a huge roadblock, right? So this is what this particular report does for you. And just to clarify again, this is an NSLDS report, so we don't have the report. It's on the NSLDS website. Anybody at your institution who has access to the NSLDS Professional Access website, they can get that on the Report tab. So moving along, we're at Enrollment Statistics Case Study number 3. After pulling the list of students that are not reported with program enrollment, you discover that the majority of them are students that are enrolled, but they have yet to declare a major. So we're talking your first-time freshman, that scenario where they have every intention to come in, remain at your school, earn a degree, get that credential, but they're simply undecided. Maybe they're just getting through those basic credits, but they're an undeclared major. It's not that they're not enrolled in a program, it's that they haven't selected a particular niche track yet, but they have every intention to do so. So these are not students who are not in a defined program. These are students who simply haven't determined their major yet, so they're currently in that undecided bucket. So what action will we take for these? These are students that, so basically, this hasn't happened too much in the immediate, of late, but when a lot of schools were taking a long, hard look at their statistics score, and then they were digging into the data that they reported, they had found that students who were undeclared majors were being reported by their school to the Clearinghouse with N for no program enrollment, which is misleading. And it's very confusing, but the Department of Ed has clarified. And so now, basically, if you have undeclared major students, there are specific SIP codes that you and program detail that you would report. So for your undecided folks, you would not report N for no program enrollment. You'd report one of these two programs with these different SIPs. And that's something that, if that is a problem and you do address it, that's usually something that can help to raise your NSLDS statistics score. So case number 4. Your school determines that you're reporting absolutely every one of your students to the clearinghouse with the correct program level information. You feel that it is sparkling, it is 100% what you want it to be, you're confident it is right, but your NSLDS statistics score, it's still not at 90%. So what can you do in that situation? So there are several different actions that you can take. And these are avenues that you would want to consider exploring where applicable, so that you can get to the bottom of why your score is below the threshold. And if it is below the threshold and it legitimately is so, like we talked about earlier with your transient student, those schools with lots of transient students, then maybe you need to approach NSLDS to see if you qualify to have that customized score. But another big one is going to be the relationship with data flow between COD and NSLDS, so Common Origination and NSLDS. And so there is a particular report. Again, it's going to be another report, but I promise you these dedicated reports can serve you in different ways. Some of them you may never need to visit, and then other reports you may be using regularly. It just depends. But there is a report. It's the SHE-10 report, and it's your comparison report that actually is reviewing the distinguished differences between the COD and the NSLDS that's specific to the program level enrollment. And the program level enrollment, again, that's going to be what NSLDS is using to do that 90% calculation for the statistics score. So this is just an example of what the SHE-10 report, that NSLDS COD comparison report, looks like. This example, it's directly from, we just grabbed this from an April 2017 NSLDS newsletter. It's newsletter number 58, and the NSLDS information that's on the SHE-10 report, it indicates that you should be able to identify those potential discrepancies that are between the NSLDS and COD program reporting information that could be impacting your score. One of the big ones that can be a discrepancy is that maybe an update that the school would make in COD for program enrollment was reported with a different program length and measurement than what your school ultimately reported for the same student to Clearinghouse, to us. So because the data that you provide to us has opportunity to flow out to NSLDS on that roster, then NSLDS is running a comparison to their own system with that of COD, and that's where they can identify these discrepancies, and that's where the SHE-10 report can be something that could be really a valuable tool for your school in the event you find that you've gone through these various case studies and been led down the path where the COD NSLDS comparison report could serve you well. So there is additional action for this case study, And that's to assess the policy that your school may have regarding enrollment reporting for your known consortium students, especially in the event your school is the visiting school where coursework completed at your school is working towards a degree that is not at your school, that's at some other school. So, not every student who takes one class at every school is going to be part of a known consortium agreement. Certainly not. But in the event you have consortium agreements, have existing policies around that, where someone's taking courses at your school and applying that credit to a degree elsewhere, then this may apply to you. So students who have outstanding aid dispersed by a prior school who continue to benefit from federal aid while attending your school, that's another one. So it's critical that students who are of interest to the NSLDS are appearing on your roster distribution. That's a key piece to the whole gamut, the whole compliance reporting process, and certainly that would, making sure that you're doing things at the timing of when you're doing things like updates to COD and so on, and sticking with your enrollment reporting schedule with the Clearinghouse, sending data to us. All of those things can definitely help and promote keeping your score what you want it to be, over that 90%. So having a complete and up-to-date NSLDS roster list can help to avoid those unnecessary dips or drops in the NSLDS enrollment reporting statistics calculation. So moving along, we want to go over just, how exactly do students make their way on to your SSCR roster, so the roster that NSLDS creates. And we're just going to go through the various ways. They are not appearing on this slide, so I will just read them to you. I'm going to read them off here. Something that we really want to take some time to mention is, how exactly the students are included on that roster. So typically, what occurs is the following. The financial aid updates COD, and then G5 for grants, and then COD, they feed that grant information to the NSLDS and also loan data servicers. The servicers feed information to the NSLDS, and then the NSLDS themselves, they actually have mechanisms in place with information sharing between their various systems, just to make additional additions to that roster distribution that NSLDS creates and sends to the Clearinghouse monthly. So then the Clearinghouse responds timely to the roster distribution with the current certification of enrollment that we have for each student that the NSLDS had requested. So there are other ways, other opportunities for students to be placed on your roster properly, and it's very symbiotic, the way that the whole process works. And for the most part, students who should be on your roster are on your roster, and in the event a student who is missing from your roster isn't there, a student who is missing from your roster, typically we can either confidently figure out, or we can at least deduce why that happened, so that it can be avoided in the future. But at any rate, these are different ways, additional ways that students are added to your roster with the NSLDS. And it's servicers, they can add them. Students can add themselves. And a caveat to that, students can add themselves only if they have an FSA token. So that's a critical piece right there. Institutions, so you can log into the NSLDS and push students to your roster. There's a time and a place where that is an appropriate step, that may be a necessary step, so that can come up. And then the roster reset, that's another one. And then the last bullet point there, Clearinghouse. We actually we have kind of a value add function in place called the ads process, and that process is designed to serve your school to alert NSLDS to students who are not on your roster with NSLDS, but used to be on a roster in the past and might still have outstanding aid. So that process has been in place for several years now, and has served the community well, which is good. So this is a pretty text-heavy slide, and this would, again, be great for reference down the road after this webinar presentation. But these are just overall best practices, and I have a promise to you, and that promise to you that is, if you commit to to this list and make adjustments where you see that adjustments maybe could prove helpful to you from this list, then these compliance best practices could alleviate you of headaches in the future, could help you with your compliance health and with future annual audits, things like that. So that's just my 2 cents about the compliance best practices that are listed here. So I won't go through all of them, but frequent reporting, if you love your schedule, you have the best enrollment reporting schedule ever, then definitely stick with it. That's what we always say. And once you send a file to us and the error resolution is available on the web, take action on those errors. We want to process your file, we want to process it swiftly, and we want that freshly certified data to be ready to go and available the next time NSLDS sends us a roster with whatever students they've listed that are of interest to them. I'll skip on down here. Another huge one. Students who complete programs at your institution report their graduated statuses to us. Reporting graduated status is a critical piece. Come audit time, auditors look for that. They're looking for that you're reporting graduated enrollment statuses appropriately and that they are appearing in NSLDS. And in addition to that, at the student level, for any student who is subject to that 150% direct loan limit, the graduated status is a critical piece for their subsidy, their interest subsidy. So NSLDS looks for the G statuses for completed programs to ensure that students don't erroneously and inadvertently lose subsidy where they shouldn't. And then we talked about this one, a few times earlier, but resolving your roster errors. So again, we present them on our website. If roster errors are presented to you, not every school gets roster errors, which is great, but sometimes it's hard to avoid roster errors. But just taking action on those. And again, if you see one that you just don't know what to do with, contact us. We are happy to take a look at them, and I promise you that there are folks here who have probably seen the error before, and maybe we could save you some time. So if you have error questions that come up, and you've reviewed information that's on demand on our website, then definitely reach out to us. And then contact school ops. Again, if you have questions that are outside of those standard questions that we answer frequently in FAQs on our site. But if something's unusual, definitely reach out to us. Maybe we've heard of it before. Maybe we can support you. So these are just additional resources. We do have up-to-date, relevant resources always available on our site. hot button topics. We want to we pump out blog posts and things like that and send you alerts via email about those blog posts and tutorials and webinars and all that. We're always trying to refresh things and keep it fresh and relevant for you. So definitely check out online resources like Compliance Central, Clearinghouse Academy, and we do have a dedicated Audit Resource Center team too that's here to support you. And again, I was going to say 24/7, but year-round, that's better way to put it. Year-round, we do have a small dedicated team, to field audit and compliance inquiries that you have that maybe come up during an audit, during an internal audit, or you just have a compliance reporting question that comes up and you haven't found the answer. We've revamped a lot of our website pages over the last 2 years, and the Compliance Central page is no exception. Super easy to navigate. I just want to promote it in that way. Reporting data, fixing errors, maintaining compliance, getting audited. So it's kind of laid out there. If you have like an audit question, there's a getting audited section. I can't promote this page enough, and there's also a blog and other helpful resources on here. And we mentioned the Academy site, so signing up for webinars like this one, or if you're interested in other Clearinghouse related content, we have updates on the Clearinghouse Academy site, as well as in-person engagements, like some of the conferences around the country. There's updates on that as well.